go. Latest trends to go with the flow. Holding it in my own hand. Then I want to laugh like I lost my mind. Usually confused all the time. I can't get no satisfaction in activity. Sitting heavily like stones upon my shoulders, weighing down on me. So let's spread our wings to bigger, better things. Flying to another world, let's go. When every door was locked away, with every possibility. Okay, just another day. I'll break the wall that's in my way. I'm shooting past that limit break. I'm certain this is just a piece of cake. Just wait and see how strong I'll be. I'll reach invincibility. This is Dragon Ball Super. Just tell the gods I'm blowing them away.
Earth. Sighing, Urano Shenron walked slowly away from the fighters group near him, looking up towards the sky. Silent as always, he waited patiently until the 3 power levels he'd been sensing came into view. Gohan, Break, and the Sorcerer descended from the sky, skimming to a halt over the rough ground. Rain was beginning to patter down around them, though not a droplet ever came within 3 feet of Uranos. "Dad!" Pan exclaimed. "You won your fight?" Gohan nodded. "Yeah, stay back, guys." "You sure?" Goku asked. "I mean, I think you got this. There's only one Shadow Dragon here." "No." Break shook her head. "You can't sense them, but there are more on the way. 3 of them." And, of course, less than a minute after she said this, Alpha Shenron, Sigma Purunga, and Hermes Shenron arrived in similarly pyrotechnic fashion, grouping near Uranos. "You people move fast," Alpha said, an odd tension to her voice. "They didn't even have time to finish the other 2 off. Not that it matters, as this universe will soon be gone entirely." "So, this is where you've chosen for your final battleground?" "Seems that way." Gohan replied, mind racing. "We're outnumbered. I wonder if the Sorcerer could take 2 of them. I wish I knew his capabilities." Alpha looked around at her comrades. "Sigma, Hermes, you need to rest. I'll take the Hakaishin that killed Kronos. Uranos, you may choose which of the remaining 2 to fight." "Milady, do you not need to rest also?" Hermes asked. "This one will not require much effort," Alpha assured him. "This doesn't make sense." Gohan realized as Uranos faced off against him. They've left Break unengaged. What are they playing at? Well, I guess she can worry about that. I've got to deal with this guy. Break had reached a similar conclusion. I have no idea what you people are thinking, but she'd begun to step towards the recuperating pair, but something unseen struck her across the face, staggering her a step back. "Who? It must be Uranos," Pan called. "He has insane telekinesis." "No, it wasn't him." Rubbing her cheek, Break glanced over at Gohan and Uranos, still squaring off, each beginning to power up. "I can feel his ki, and he didn't do anything. Neither did the others. Once you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth." Gohan quoted, eyes still fixed on his opponent. "Sorcerer, do any of these dragons have the power to attack without leaving an energy signature?" "No. And I can guess where you're going with this," the Sorcerer informed him. "I looked harder. There is another mind somewhere. Disparate, scattered, shadowed. But I have seen it." "I get it," Break grimaced. "They did send someone to fight me. There's been another Shadow Dragon, a stealth specialist, here the whole time." A second blow struck home, this one to her side. "Invisible, no sound, no key signature. Our magic guy can't properly read its mind. This one's good." Gohan, meanwhile, was stalemated with Uranos. He was pushing towards the Shadow Dragon with all his strength, and Uranos was pushing back with his mental force, holding Gohan at bay. Beginning to be pushed back now, the Super Saiyan vanished, using instant transmission and attempting to attack Uranos from behind. But as soon as he appeared, he was flung away by the same wall of force. "It's in all directions?" Uranos took a step forwards, unfolding his arms and crushing down on Gohan with even greater power. "Gonna black out! Too strong! Ugh!" Gohan managed to clear his head enough to shift, but not himself. He reversed the flow of Uranos' force, turning it back on itself. The equal waves met and cancelled out, grinding together, neither gaining any ground. However, as soon as he saw that his current attack was no longer working, Uranos vanished, appearing behind Gohan and punting him away with a simple kick, before landing neatly, standing to attention. Gohan jumped to his feet, facing away from Uranos. He drew his hands down to his side, concentrating his power. Kamehameha! Uranos tensed, waiting for the Saiyan to turn, but it never happened. Gentle red ore flaring violently for a second, Gohan fired directly ahead of him, away from Uranos. Ha! Uranos frowned, confused, but a shifted portal opened directly behind him, Gohan's beam emerging and hitting him full force between the shoulders, sending him sprawling onto his face. Gotta hurry, he'll recover quick! Gohan leaped over towards his downed opponent, aiming a jump kick down at him, but Uranos rolled out of the way, generating a massive telekinetic pull that smashed Gohan into the ground, disoriented from the sudden movement. The sorcerer was approaching Alpha, beady eyes narrowed. You're angry. Furious, Alpha confirmed. But not at me. Interesting. I would have thought there'd be something of a revenge motive going there. What with your shared history with Kronos? Alpha spat. Reading minds is second nature to you, isn't it? Can you even stop anymore? No, you're angry at yourself. Because you weren't upset at all when he died. I think you're mistaken. We climbed out of the pit together. For years, all we had was each other. Despite what some may think, I'm not that callous. The sorcerer leered. But he was. Don't you dare! Alpha lunged, throwing a hard right. The sorcerer rolled his eyes, waving a hand and directing a humming barrier, which her fist proceeded to shatter, not even slowing down, hitting the sorcerer's head side on and hurling him away. She lowered her arm. What the hell are you trying to say? My shield. The sorcerer wheezed, a puddle of blood forming around his beak as he scrabbled to get up. You cast a counterspell on your physical attack? Alpha shrugged. I'm only a novice, and I only ever studied negation techniques to use against other spells. But then, that's all I need. Your type of magic can produce miracles, but that's not the only way it functions like that of a wishing-type dragon. As opposed to combat types like you, yes, he muttered, backing away. Basic wishing dragons cannot affect a being who exceeds their creator's power, and by extent their own. Yours is somewhat more forgiving, but the substantial power gap between us makes dispelling your tricks simplicity itself, even for one as inexperienced in magic as I. And this? The Hakaishin lashed out with his staff, channeling his arcane might through it and producing a storm of pale blue flames. This is the soul fire that destroyed Kronos! Yes, that would indeed be deadly to me, if I allowed it to hit me. Alpha's voice answered from behind him. Now, please continue dishonoring my fallen comrade. The sorcerer jumped back, eyes dilating, breathing hard and fast. He managed to calm himself, raising his staff again. Kronos never cared about you. He only used you as a tool for survival. Your strength helped him escape the pit. And what the hell do you know about it? Alpha roared, closing the distance again and ripping his staff from his fingers, striking him so hard with it that the enchanted wood turned to sawdust. He fell back again, letting fly bolts of sorcerous power, which he deflected. I know! Because you know! He gasped. Deep within you, you've always known. His eyes were always so cold. His voice, flat. He didn't care if you lived or died as long as he got what he wanted. That isn't! She raged, grabbing him by his neck and shaking him violently. That's not... He... Deny it then! He spat, trying in vain to pull her grip away. Can you? I know you're the type who has to be true to themselves and their beliefs. You can't say it. You don't have the conviction. Shut up! Alpha trembled, fingers slowly tightening around his throat. I'll kill you. I have no illusions about that, he choked. But not yet! He formed an odd gesture with one hand, eyes glowing momentarily, and ghostly tendrils of force wrapped themselves around Alpha's forearms, wrenching them away from the sorcerer and allowing him to escape. Snarling, she tore through them without much effort, glaring over at him. I've had enough of this. The feeling is mutual. Tien was focusing on gathering energy as fast as he could manage. Now that Uranos Shenron was fighting an opponent on his level, he could no longer maintain his hold on the Spirit Bomb, and Tien was free to build up its power once more. I've almost got all the energy I can from the surrounding stars and planets, like the one I used on Dr. Wheelo, but that won't be nearly enough to injure opponents on this level. As soon as I've hit that level's maximum, it'll be time, King Kai. I hear you. The North Galaxy's Guardian responded telepathically. So you want to do another request for additional energy like against Majin Buu? All the Earth's people barely had enough to finish that creature, and these shadow dragons are far more powerful. I know, Tien grinned. We're going to have to step it up a little this time. Bright grunted as another 3 blows from her unseen opponent hit home in rapid succession. Damn it! I just can't get a fix on this thing! Alright then, try this! She drew in her power for a moment before launching it out in a dome around herself, right around when she figured it would be coming in for another attack. She'd guessed correctly. Visible in the explosion of emerald power was the dark outline of a serpentine figure, limbs contorted as it was flung away through the air. Gotcha! She growled, leaping after it and swinging for it, but it must have recovered quickly, as she only managed to graze its slick scales, gasping in pain as a return strike from its claws opened a large cut on her arm. She spun, lashing out, but it was back on the offensive now, coming from behind this time, and sinking 3-inch fangs into her shoulder. Break had never actually screamed before in her life, not in the traditional sense, though she had done plenty of shouting, including the particular powering up yell often referred to as a scream. Never the panicked, distressed, girly sort of scream. But the shadow dragon's teeth scraped bone, and carried some foul magic that made them burn and freeze all at once. And this scream was as high-pitched and awful to hear as any helpless damsel's. Her fighter's instincts took over almost immediately, fortunately, and somewhere she registered that she now once again knew where her enemy was. The elbow of her good arm snapped backwards, digging into the thing's ribs, and it screeched, opening its mouth for an instant, in which she spun away, trailing worrying amounts of blood, and reminding herself not to use that arm. She stepped back in, determined not to lose it again, leaning her whole body backwards to deliver a rising kick that knocked it off balance again, before drawing her arm back, concentrating energy to deliver a killing blow. Before she could fire though, something struck her from behind, before wrapping itself around her neck and jerking her off to the side, causing her shot to fly wide. Its tail reached all the way behind me! How big is this bastard? She choked, trying to pull its tail away, but repeated body shots from in front thwarted this. Her good arm fell limply to her side, eyes rolling back into her head. Gohan, meanwhile, was not faring any better. Uranos had gained the initiative and was now maintaining a tight grip on his head with one hand, using the other to repeatedly pummel him at close range, beating him relentlessly until resistance ceased. The sorcerer, on the defensive himself, saw all this with some dismay. Damn it all! Alpha flickered into view behind him, glaring down at him. I'm not stupid. You've been hammering at my psyche and my repressed memories and intuitions long enough. You've succeeded. I admit it. You're right. She unfolded her arms, a leisurely movement, arcs of power crackling and popping between her fingers. Kronos never cared for me. I'm justified in feeling no connection to him. Well done. You've managed to make me truly angry. With no warning, she struck, blindingly fast, and before the sorcerer registered the movement, he was on the ground, clutching a broken leg. Congratulations. If you were trying to demoralize me, though, hard luck. Pan looked on in horror. They're all gonna die! Grandpa, we have to... It wouldn't be any different from last time, Goku said calmly. But normally I wouldn't care about that. I'd have already tried, if there wasn't help on the way already. Help? Pan blinked, focusing her senses. I don't sense anybody new. You can't. You can't sense divine ki. And you can? Pan rounded on him. Since when? You sure as hell don't have it. I can sense you. I don't know, he whispered. But I can feel their power now. All of them. And it's glorious. He grinned. Don't worry. They're here. Alpha loomed over the sorcerer's prone form, nodding to her 2 cohorts. Finish them. Milady, I sense... Hermes burst out from behind the battleground. Too late. As Alpha's hand arced down, an explosion of ki went off directly in her face, causing her to spring back, snarling. Gohan and Break were also released as further spots peppered the battlefield, driving the shadow dragons back. Uranos tried to rejoin with Alpha, Hermes, and Sigma, but was cut off by an unexpected figure. The god of destruction known as the Dreamer. This is the tale of hope's rekindling, she said lyrically. A few meters away, the scholar stood, facing what seemed to be nothing, obviously blocking the stealth dragon's path. The Silent and the Pilgrim now stood before Alpha, Hermes, and Sigma, and were shortly joined by the fisherman, who came in last, telekinetically towing with him the unconscious bodies of Cadmus, Mercury, the warrior, the hunter, the pilot, and Beerus. Alpha chuckled. What's this now? The cavalry needs cavalry? Please, you're the B team. Your Hakaishin already sent your greatest warriors, and we still defeated you. This rabble stands no chance. We shall see, the pilgrim said cheerily, leaning on his walking stick. Hermes, Sigma, take those two. Alpha commanded, indicating him and the Silent, and the two shadow dragons behind her leapt off to confront the pair of Hakaishin, leaving her facing only the fisherman. How did you get here? He turned at the voice to see Beerus pushing himself up, wiping trails of blood from his face and shaking his head. Scholar couldn't resist tracking you guys, so we all saw everything that happened, the fisherman explained, helping his compatriot up. Soon as Silent heard the truth about Janemba, well, these guys are responsible for all the crap Silent went through because of him. He shrugged. And I guess the rest of us decided that fate of all universes slightly outweighs I don't like fighting. We didn't actually leave long after you guys did. Right. How's Silent holding up? Beerus mumbled, stumbling a little. More to the point, how about you? I'm fine. The Hakaishin slurred, bleary-eyed. Got hit by a mental attack. Body's fine. I'll be good to go. Just a minute. Alpha stepped towards them, clenching her fists. Unfortunately for you, a minute is something you don't have. However, an energy blast struck her from behind moments after the words left her mouth, drawing a hiss of irritation as steam rose from her back. He does if I have anything to say about it. Gohan growled, marching towards her, energy flaring around him and cracking the ground beneath his feet, ignoring the bruises now dotting his body. I'll have to go through you to get to him, is that it? She mocked. His eyes narrowed. Seems that way, doesn't it? The scholar ducked back, narrowly avoiding a swipe from the invisible shadow dragon, visor blinking as she glanced hurriedly from one holographic display to the other, tapping and adjusting them constantly. She dodged another attack. Another. Don't be confused. There's no such thing as perfect stealth. Her bodysuit, a miraculous fusion of magic and technology, hummed with a strange glow, sensors clicking and flashing. Do you honestly think you, or anything for that matter, can hide from my sight? She somersaulted over the creature as it lunged at her, landing gracefully behind it and continuing to work at her screens. Taking out your stealth, your power is woefully beneath that of any Hakaishin. But I would hardly deign to lower myself to actual physical violence. She smiled unpleasantly. My movements in avoiding your attacks, however, have managed to pinpoint your location. At least for one eagle-eyed enough to pick up on such small clues as I have left. The unnamed shadow dragon finally spoke, a low, husky, rasping voice. What are you talking? It got no further before a blazing arrow speared it through the neck, dropping it instantly in a fountain of blood. Quite a ways away, the hunter half sat up, giving a groggy thumbs up after lowering his bow. The scholar gave a curt nod in response. Even that was more recognition than one could usually hope for from her. Sigma Purunga circled the Silent, who shifted uneasily from one foot to the other, breathing oddly beneath his cloak and hood. Yes, you're as powerful as the other one I fought. Maybe more. Far beyond me, physically, the shadow dragon croaked. But your mind, that is my domain, and none can best me there. The Silent cocked his head sideways, taking a sudden step forwards, startling Sigma. Fine, Sigma continued. You don't want to waste time talking? Then just lie down and die! He flung his many scrawny arms forwards, lashing out with his full mental power, latching onto the Hakaishin's mind and searching for a weakness, the flaws, the cracks in the god's prideful armor. The last one had been easy. Surely this one couldn't be. Couldn't be. Gah! Sigma howled in utter agony, reeling back and collapsing to the ground, clutching at his head. What? What a mind! Such pain, rage, grief, and all bottled up inside. But in that instant, he unleashed it directly on me. I've never encountered a being like this. What are you? The Silent simply walked over, stamping on Sigma's throat, and twisting his foot with a brutal snap, breaking the shadow dragon's neck instantly. Alpha watched these disturbingly brief combats with no little sense of disbelief. This can't be! Get used to it! Gohan leapt at her from overhead, and she blocked a rapid volley of kicks, swatting him away. He dug a hand into the ground, bringing himself to a halt and swinging his body back towards her, letting loose a matrix of overlapping energy beams ahead of him. Alpha hardened her aura, causing the blast to glance away without touching her, before stepping in and delivering a swift uppercut, halting his flight instantly and knocking him away again. "I'm going to be honest with you," she said, breathing hard now from the constant battling she'd been doing all day. "This has not been my day. Hakaishin rebelling against the natural order, my comrades being killed around me, Wisarion making me kill him, dooming the Eternal to eventual starvation when it runs out of universes, and the revelation that the sole being I could internally call friend never cared for me from the start. So I'm extremely glad that these fools keep lining up for me to beat on." She dodged another lunge, bringing her knee up into his exposed midsection and hammering him back down to the ground with both hands. It's very cathartic. Gohan forced himself up again, aura flaring wildly around him. "You come here, trying to destroy our universe, take the Dragon Balls, kill our friends, and you're having a bad day?" He seethed. "I don't want to hear that from you!" Growling, Alpha struck out at him again, but this time he reacted in time, swinging his own punch. Their fists met halfway between them, colliding with earth-shaking force and blasting apart the entire mountain range that ringed where the tower had stood, and sending the Kachin rubble flying, the combined result of which was that the battlefield was now almost completely flat. The combatants all paused, glancing over in shock at the origin of the enormous collision. Gohan fell back a step, wincing as his hand throbbed. "Ow!" Alpha stared down at her steaming forearm. "Did he just match? No, I'm just tiring. That wasn't my full strength. Still, his power does seem to be growing. This universe has some strange warriors." "Try my full power this time!" she declared, raising her ki back to its normal level with some effort. She raised her arm, forming a full power blast and aiming it at the Super Saiyan God, who responded with a cocky grin, leaping over at her and throwing his own point-blank range blast directly into hers, causing a miniature beam clash between their almost touching hands, shafts of energy shooting off to the side, and scoring deep burn marks into the ground, or scything clouds in two. "What is this?" Alpha hissed, pumping as much ki as she could into her attack, trying to remain standing steady. "Anyone who's fought me knows about my reserves, activated by necessity," Gohan replied, beginning to waver a little. "I've trained for almost 2 decades since I fought Beerus, and upon reawakening my Super Saiyan God powers, I was stronger than ever." He was sliding back now, bringing his other hand up to bear and digging his feet in for purchase. "But I hadn't fought an opponent who vastly exceeded this power, who could really test me. Until now. Like Broly, Deborah, and even Beerus did before. You're awakening my potential!" Just as he finished speaking, Alpha's energy finally overwhelmed his, blasting him onto his back. She took a stumbling step back, panting heavily. "I still significantly exceeded him, but too close." "I get the feeling your growth has hit its limit for now," she said, walking back towards him as he groaned, trying to sit up. "But it's still safer to kill you now." "I wouldn't take another step if I were you," came a warning. Alpha sighed, looking over her shoulder, and found that the fisherman was now confronting her, apparently intending to fight. "Are you seriously going to challenge me?" The portly Hakaishin lifted up his straw hat with a thumb, revealing a malevolent grin. "Yep, little old me. And look how confident I am. One might even think I can back it up. What a twist, eh?" "The Pilgrim," the Hakaishin said with a jovial smile. "Terribly sorry, as you don't seem too bad a sort, but I'm going to have to kill you now." "Hermes Shenron," the Shadow Dragon responded, giving a slight bow. "Likewise. May the best man win?" "I concur. And let's skip the warm-up, if you don't mind." "Very well." Hermes vanished, and a moment later the Pilgrim did the same, his hat floating to the ground as he vanished from under it, dodging Hermes' first punch by a small fraction. They sped off, racing away into the upper atmosphere, momentarily reappearing every few seconds, locked in combat. Below them, the Dreamer floated up to Urano's Shenron, a distant look on her face. "I am so sorry," she said, eyes flickering with an eerie light. "Your tale is about to end." He sneered, swiping his arm around in a wide arc and letting fly a hemispherical wave of energy, but it swept harmlessly away over the battlefield, the Dreamer now appearing behind him and placing her hand on the back of his neck, her palm beginning to heat up. Before it could build to dangerous levels, Urano flung out backwards with his telekinesis, driving her away, leaving her hand clutching at nothing. "That's an interesting power," the Dreamer whispered, running a finger down the wall of invisible force that now prevented her from approaching Uranos. "Now you cannot approach me. He said sternly, speaking for the first time, in a voice like steel grinding against steel. "In this realm, perhaps," she answered lyrically, giving a haunting smile. "But in a dream, such physical limitations are rarely an issue." Her outline wavering oddly, she stepped easily through his barrier, letting it wash over her and experiencing no resistance. "There, you see? Simple."
What?
Aranos' eyes dilated in shock as he took an uneasy step backwards. Once again, she sped around behind him, her willowy frame swaying to a halt. "I call it a contest of will. All I must do is disbelieve your power's ability to affect me." She touched the tip of a finger to the small of his back. "Here ends the tale of the master of blunt force. He could not see beyond." Aranos opened his mouth to reply, but before he could say anything, she sent a pulse of concentrated ki through her finger and into his body. It detonated inside, pulping his organs and shattering his ribs. Shafts of light emerged from his eyes and mouth as he collapsed, perishing silently. "I am sorry," the dreamer said in a low voice, bowing to the corpse. "I truly am." Hermes spat blood as the pilgrim's walking stick smashed into his face, followed by another sharp blow, this to the ribs. He fell back, bringing his guard up and focusing on defense. "Normally I could handle him physically, but fighting the pilot sapped my strength. I haven't the energy left to overcome him through traditional means." The pilgrim swung again, but found himself suddenly several meters away. He lowered his improvised weapon, frowning. "Well, that's irritating. You are keeping that in reserve?" Hermes nodded. "I prefer to at least try and fight through physical means, but yes, my true power lies in control over the 3 spatial dimensions." "Good for you." The pilgrim gave a start as the distance between them reduced just enough for Hermes to strike him, before immediately increasing again, allowing Hermes to dodge his frantic counterattack. "Ugh, not so good for me," he groaned, rubbing a bruised spot on his stomach. "My previous opponent was stronger, and especially faster, than you," Hermes boasted. "She still couldn't overcome this technique. You, therefore, have no chance." "You're also weaker than you were when you fought her," the pilgrim countered. "My spatial power is unaffected. I can attack as I please, and your blows will never reach me. I can keep you at arm's length all day if I so wish." "Is that so?" The pilgrim threw off his traveling cloak, discarding his walking stick, aura heating up around him. "I sense something different." Hermes frowned, puzzled. His ki isn't increasing, but it's changed somehow. "I am the pilgrim," the Hakaishin intoned, youthful features growing more angular, voice lowering. "I have walked my universe from one end to the other. I have stood at the heart of a star. I have seen the birth and death of worlds. I have held a black hole between my hands and watched it swallow the light trying to escape my eyes. I have been to the edge of my universe and stared into the void beyond until I understood its magnitude. And you dare to tell me where I can and cannot go?" Despite his unimpressive stature, he seemed an entirely new being, and for some reason he couldn't place. Hermes found himself terrified, rooted to the spot, jaw hanging open in stunned silence. "I have walked among my people, and their countless trillions, and I have heard their stories, and I have remembered them all." A wispy glow emerged from his body, flowing over to Hermes and wreathing him in its coils. "Let me share them with you." Hermes felt a chill run down his spine as the strange mist enveloped him, and then...
Too many, so many, can't think, no, alone, leave me alone.
The pilgrim picked up his walking stick, patting the dust off the top half, and glanced over at Hermes, still writhing on the ground, clutching at his head. "When you recover your wits, I hope you will have learned your lesson. Stay down if you know what's good for you." Alpha chuckled. "Go on then, little man. What are you going to..." She paused. "That's a strange aura you're emitting. What the hell are you doing?" The fisherman's grin widened. He took a slow step backwards, raising his arms into a fighting stance, and then immediately dropping it again, giving a mocking blow. "It's a technique for emitting a strange aura as a bluff. Completely harmless. But it sure feels like I'm about to do something dangerous, right?" "Are you mocking me?" Alpha growled. "Not at all," he laughed. "I'm just distracting you to buy time for him to recover." "Huh?" Alpha gave an irritated grunt as Beerus rocketed at her, stepping back and backhanding him to the ground. She rocked forwards on her feet slightly, inhaling deeply and wiping away a curtain of sweat. I hope that wasn't your last hope. Did you think he could challenge me? Come on! Gohan looked up, teeth clenched. Get up! What I said about my potential, it's gotta go double for you! You've never had an opponent outclass you so much in a life or death battle. There's never been a call like this for your true power to awaken. If you're really the god of our universe, if you're anything like us, you've gotta have more than this. And besides, strong emotions always brought out my best. I doubt you've ever been upset more than once or twice in your long life. But now, Alpha did a slight double take as Beerus slowly raised himself to his feet, a low growl rising in his throat. I'm finally fighting you. You took the... He closed his eyes for a moment, trembling. The only friend I've ever had in this world. And you think you can take me down that easy? She shrugged. I had hoped so. I'm reaching the end of my tether, physically. She glanced away, clearly not paying much heed to his rage. Damn you! Beerus' teeth ground together, and one foot slid back, digging into the ground. The next moment, Alpha felt a tremendous impact to her stomach, and a wall of blurred purple motion filled her vision in an instant before she was sent skidding wildly back, coughing up blood. Take me seriously already! What the? She gasped. Super Saiyan God! Beerus snapped. Get off your ass and help me already! Right, I hear you. Gohan staggered up next to Beerus, their auras growing in intensity. Alpha shielded her eyes. The mortal turned God. He was almost beaten, but he's growing back towards full strength. It's as if the 7th Hakaishin is leading by example. After you, Gohan said, to which Beerus nodded, charging with the Super Saiyan God half a step behind. Alpha braced herself, but as she drew back slightly to defend herself, something twinged in her side, and she let out a hiss of pain, flinching slightly and creating an opening in her defenses. An opening which the two divine fighters crashed directly into, each planting a foot on the joint where one of her shoulders joined her body, the combining impact lifting her off her feet. They spun forwards in the air, bringing their arms down, a fist smashing into each side of her face. Vision blurring, impact stinging, she rolled uncontrollably away, finally coming to a halt and looking up to see one blaze of red, silent and controlled, and one of violent, yelling at deafening volumes, both inbound at high velocity. Their power hasn't exceeded mine, and I don't think it's going to. But with them working together, combined with my fatigue, this is bad. She flung herself forwards, diving beneath their charge and avoiding the first hits. Can't let them take the initiative again. She pushed off the ground, swinging a kick up at each of them, but they phased out of view, appearing behind her. She dodged back as they struck out, avoiding their physical blows, but failing to notice that Gohan's contained a ki blast. She jerked her body sideways, feeling the heat of the beam on her face as it passed by millimeters from her. This momentary pause was all it took. Beerus appeared slightly above her, spinning around and throwing an elbow into her neck, downing her again. Gohan lunged downwards at her, and she rolled out of the way, letting him power to the ground beside her, but his other arm came down, catching her in the ribs. She lashed out desperately, snatching his wrist and pulling him in for a counter-strike, but not before Beerus slid in under Gohan's now flying body and kicked her away, forcing her to let go. As she tumbled to a halt, they joined their power for a final blast, propelling her even further away. She landed amidst the other victorious Hakaishin, body trailing blood and smoke, groaning as she slowly opened her eyes. She froze, seeing that her allies had been similarly defeated. We only needed a couple more minutes! This can't be happening! We better finish her before she generates enough negative energy, the scholar suggested. At full power, she'd be a threat for even several of us. But injured as she is, 2 or 3 out of my way! Beerus shouted, marching up to the group. Gohan, you too. After all the hits she's taken, I can handle this myself. Gohan hesitated. She's still a serious threat, but right now, I don't want to argue with him. Get up! Beerus hissed. Alpha stumbled to her feet, smiling through bloodied lips. Don't get cocky all of a sudden. You'll never be a match for me! She lunged, right arm snaking out and catching him across the face. He staggered a single step back, before turning his head back down towards her. Is that all you've got left? He responded with the exact same motion, his own punch spinning her in a full circle. Come on! Is that the strength that killed Whis? She tried to regain her balance, lining up for another attack. Don't talk like you knew Wisterian! You're right! Beerus ducked under her attempt at a strike, his forehead rising up and striking her in the chin, forming another bruise and almost taking her off her feet again. she managed to stay standing, swaying heavily. "You're right," he repeated. "I didn't know this Wisterian person. He never showed me that side of himself. So the person I'm kicking the crap out of you for is my friend, Whis!" He rammed an energy sphere into her guard, detonating it and drawing a pained growl. "I'm too weakened from all this fighting. But even so, he wasn't nearly this strong earlier today. Wisterian was telling the truth about his potential?" Yeah! Beers pressed his attack, a spin kick entering her field of view almost too late, but she got a hand up to defend herself in time, striking back in the same instant. He blocked, disengaging and dropping to the ground, letting her follow up with a downward swinging elbow, parrying that as well. "This is insane! How can I be brought so low by a mere god?" She pushed against him, trying unsuccessfully to break his guard. "Why'd you think I never broke through this limit before?" he retorted. "I used to be like you. But since I met people like them, since I finally learned what Whis wanted to tell me all along, but knew I'd never listen. Will you shut up and fight?" Alpha took a small step back to get space for a fully swung punch. Beerus smashed it aside, responding with one of his own, maintaining contact with her as his momentum dragged her into the ground with his downwards arcing limb. "If you only live to destroy, you'll never defeat me!" He yelled tearfully as Alpha sank into the crumbling ground, limbs flying out limply, his fist still planted in her abdomen. "I'm sorry, Whis. It took me so long to understand." He defeated Alpha. On his own, Gohan marveled. And I never thought I'd hear him say something like that. "This battle," the God of Destruction declared shakily, "is over." Nearby, all but forgotten about, Hermes Shenron's eyes slowly opened. The hammering in his mind was dying down. He heard Beerus's words, a wave of fear gripping him. But then, determination. "Not if I have anything to say about it. It isn't." "I suppose it's pointless," Alpha wheezed, cracking one eye open, feeling a sharp stab of pain from a cracked tooth as she spoke. "To tell you I'll never surrender. You have to kill me to stop the Eternal anyway." She sighed, and it suddenly seemed as if a great weight had been lifted from her. "Then the cycle truly is ending here. I can stop at last. So don't waste words on me. I don't deserve your condemnation, and I don't require your sympathy. Just do it, and do it cleanly." Beerus, standing over her sprawled form, nodded, raising his hand and clenching it once more into a fist, his aura sparking and spluttering as he forced it into life once more, the effort of raising his power to such a level beginning to show. Despite what she'd said, however, he did have a few words for her. "Tell Whis I sent you." He brought his arm down, energy-wreathed hands spearing for her neck. She smiled slightly, closing her eyes. "At last. Peace." Slightly over halfway to making lethal contact, however, Beerus's finishing blow was interrupted by a great and terrible noise, akin to the howling of a wounded beast magnified 1,000-fold. A sudden rush of fear gripped his heart, and he froze, unable to finish his attack. "What is..." The others all felt something similar, if lessened in severity from Beerus, who seemed to be standing at the epicenter. Only Gohan recognized it, though. "Oh no. This feeling... This is..." A bolt of green flame roared down from the heavens, splitting the air before it and racing for the ground. Beerus recovered his wits just in time to jump out of the way as it hit, engulfing Alpha's body completely and settling into a simmering mass around where she'd lain. "What the hell's happening? This sensation..." Goku looked on from a distance. "I have a feeling. Things are about to get worse." He turned to Pan, Oob, Vegeta Jr., and Goten. "You guys had better leave now." "What?" Pan protested. "And you're staying? I can't leave you behind." Goten concurred. "Don't argue!" Goku snapped, urgency rising in his voice. "Tien, I don't know what you're planning to make your spirit bomb effective against foes like this, but you can't leave now you're forming it. I'll stay to guard you." He addressed the others again. "I'm the best choice. If I can catch a divine being off guard, my Ryuken can hurt them. You guys are just going to put yourselves in danger. Please go." "I can't lose anybody else." Oob nodded. "Come on, guys. He's right." He looked his teacher in the eye. "Stay alive yourself, okay? Do my best." Alpha Shenron walked out from the flames, their light flaring up and attaching itself to her body. the substance supplementing her ruined outfit by forming into hard, light armor plating, new vitality flowing through her formerly battered features. Not yet. I'm not done yet, it seems. But what is more surprising is the lengths my benefactor has decided to go. The Eternal has created in me a direct link to its own power. But to do such a thing, she swept her gaze around at her group of enemies. Goku stood guarding Tien. Beerus faced her directly, with the Silent, the Dreamer, the Scholar, and the Pilgrim just behind him. The Fisherman was helping Gohan up, and the Hunter was still only just sitting up, half conscious. The amount of energy expended to make that link, her face grew grim. If the Eternal does not consume this universe, it will starve. It has become all or nothing. I cannot understand why, though. Surely it would make more sense for it to withdraw for now, with me and the others defeated. It has more Shadow Dragons in the pit. There are other universes. Yet it risks all on this battle. She did not say any of this, of course. It's not Divine Ki anymore, the Scholar muttered, frantically tapping her visor as it failed to process the energy readings Alpha was now emitting. I can't sense her power, the Pilgrim agreed. It doesn't feel like a key signature at all, just a presence. Like nothing I've ever encountered in all my years. Gohan scowled. I felt it before. This is definitely the Eternal's power. I didn't want to believe it, but the Eternal, and by extension, now Alpha 2, must have some kind of power that even exceeds Divine Ki. I've got no fancy words for you, Beerus said, addressing the Hakaishin behind him. I don't know if we can win. I'm going to try. Follow me if you want. He ran at Alpha, drawing both hands back and preparing to feint with his left to create an opening. But before he had time to do even that, something blurred along his line of sight that might have been her arm, or her leg, or even a slash of pure energy. And he went down howling, rolling away with smoke trailing from his face, hands clutched over it. The Dreamer jumped in front of him, shielding him from Alpha, who grunted, flicking a rapidly growing energy beam at her. The Dreamer steadied herself, eyes flashing. All I have to do is disbelieve its ability to harm me. For the first few moments, it seemed to work. The now huge blast parted as it reached her, flowing around and away from both her and Beerus, passing harmlessly beside him. Alpha saw this with some irritation, raising an eyebrow and putting more conviction into her attack. The Dreamer gasped, falling to one knee and feeling the pressure on her increase. What strong will? She dug her fingers into the ground, breaking out into a sweat. I can't overcome it! She's reasserting her reality! Beerus, now looking up, one hand still clamped over his eye, had time to utter, "Ah, crap," upon hearing this, before the blast broke through the Dreamer's defenses, hurling them both away. Alright, King Kai, we're going to have to hurry. Tien contacted his longtime benefactor once more. I once asked you what the limit of your telepathy was, and you said there wasn't one. You could communicate with everyone in the universe if you wanted to, including translation. Yes, but what? Oh, King Kai replied. You mean... Yeah, Tien grinned nervously. Let me talk to them. All of them. I can't gather ki from that far away in the normal way. But if they send it voluntarily... there are probably a lot of people with heart conditions out there. I mean, if a voice in their head starts... I'll be polite. Now focus. Fate of the universe, remember? Right. People of the universe, what you're hearing is not a dream or a hallucination. Please listen. There's not much time. New Namek. It would seem, my brethren, the elder Mori said as he stood, that we are called upon once more to do our part. Alfheim. Tensha looked up from her work. Darie, do you hear that? Yes, and it's quite irritating, his fellow speaker growled. She held up a hand, quieting him. He says he's a friend of Son Gohan, the golden warrior that once visited our world. The machine monster dragged him off. He survived, evidently. He paused. Am I hearing this right? These servants of the Eternal that even Lord Janemba fears. This man says he can defeat them? Let us hope he can. Darie grunted. I don't trust it. Asking for our energy? And if it's a trick of the Eternals? Do it. A new voice rumbled. Do as he says, all of you. Spread the word. Give the order to the drones to send their energy too. Tensha sprang out of her chair at the demonic visage that had appeared in the center of the room. Lord Janemba! Your true body. This isn't an avatar. Correct. With the Eternal so close, this universe has become very easy to reach. Its boundaries have been weakened by the breach they're opening for it. Even with the seal on the 13th universe, I was able to send 2 mortals back earlier. Things are closer to the end now, and even one such as I can cross it. I must go. It turned its head towards the roof and begun to shift. I thank you all for your service. Outpost 239C. Bro, did you hear that voice? Minosha burst through the door, skidding into the officer's quarters. I did, Tapion said softly, rising from his chair. And he says he's a friend of Raditz and the others. He smiled. Tell everyone to do as he says. I owe them a debt I can never repay. I wouldn't worry about sending an order, Captain, another member of the Defense Corps said cheerily as she approached, hot drink in hand. King Tarble's already put out word through the whole Republic. It sounded strange to say King and Republic in the same sentence, but the title was more decorative than anything, representing the young ruler's royal Saiyan heritage more than his actual status as a political figure. The soldier raised her free hand, palm upwards, focusing her ki. Shall we? Tapion nodded. Of course. Earth. Get on the news! Emergency broadcast! General Ripper bellowed, his voice carrying over the Security Council's babbling. Everyone is to do as the voice says! Contact the more isolated cities too. I want this thing global! I concur. Prime Minister Eriks was trying to say, but his shy voice was lost amidst the chaos. Intelligence Chief Reynolds cut across Ripper's monologue. With all due respect, General, I don't think we should so blindly trust— With all due respect, Chief. These people have saved our collective asses more times than I can count, so you can shut the hell up! And while after my latest unbelievable training regimen, I'm sure I could take them all down in 10 seconds flat even at my age, I believe in letting other people having a shot from now and then, Hercule was blathering. So why don't you all show some compassion for your fellow men and lend them some energy? Yes, sir! His multitude of students chorused, raising their hands in unison and channeling their impressive ki towards the spirit bomb. Another explosion rang out in the crowded football stadium as Launch fired a ki into the ground between the terrified teams. This is the last time I'm going to tell you people, she yelled, silencing the screaming audience. Hands up! Weird voice in your head? Energy! Give! Now! Yes, it's working! Tien looked up at the quickly growing energy sphere above him. It's immense, far greater than it's ever been. But it's not complete yet. It'll take a while for all that energy to arrive from all over the universe. I hope we have that long. It certainly didn't seem like they did. The Silent and the Scholar had just been sent flying away with a casual wave of Alpha's hand, and the Pilgrim was currently warily facing off against her. Alright, he said slowly, lifting his hat slightly. I clearly can't compete with you physically, but the mental realm might be different. I just dealt with another mental attack, Alpha replied offhandedly, armor oddly silent as she shrugged. But try, if you like. Alright, the Pilgrim began, before a solid punch to the stomach silenced him, dropping him instantly. Alpha smiled. I'll admit it, I lied to get you off guard. I observed your battle with Hermes, and I don't want to be on the receiving end of that. I might still be able to defeat you, but I'd rather not find out, and I'd have on a hell of a headache at the very least. She cast her gaze around. Now, who's left? Just me, the fisherman exclaimed, jumping up and down, waving his hands energetically. You won't intimidate me again, she warned. I know you're no threat. Well, when it comes down to it, he sighed. I still have the power of a god. And though I don't like it, I can still fight in the old-fashioned way. He discarded the fishing rod he'd been twirling, preparing a ki blast in each hand. There is a lot at stake here after all. Please, Alpha laughed. An attack like that would be practically nothing to me normally. What are you going to do to me now? Line up the perfect shot, he answered, firing his blast directly downwards to propel himself into the air, revealing the hunter, formerly hidden behind him, arrow notched and fully charged. He grinned, eyes gleaming, before firing. Alpha sighed, snatching the blazing projectile in mid-flight and incinerating it. Clever, but futile. Damn, the fisherman muttered, still hanging in the air. His eyes widened as Alpha appeared directly behind him, slapping him across the back of the head and sending him back to Earth. She landed in front of the hunter, straightening up. And you've done quite enough interfering, I think, she said, easily pulling his bow from his grasp and snapping it in two, tossing it aside. That's a preview of your spine in a few seconds, by the way, she continued in a casual, conversational voice. I'm in no condition to even try and fight her physically. The hunter lowered his head, trembling all over. If anyone asks, tell them I died well. Trust me, you all did. She changed her mind about her method of execution, deciding to grant him a quick death via energy blast. But when she fired, it was swallowed up by a suddenly forming portal, energy merging behind her and striking her in the back. She growled, turning to see Gohan on his feet and shuffling towards her. It never ends! The pilgrim grasps his walking stick, using to push himself up. Can't stop now! Too close to... Ah! A strange force gripped his body, pulling in multiple directions and threatening to tear him apart from within. What is... I hate to attack from behind like this, Hermes Shenron said wearily, standing a few feet behind with one hand held out towards him. And this kind of death doesn't suit you. But you're physically weaker than the Hakaishin I fought earlier, and injured besides. So I do have the power to kill you this way. And as distasteful as it is, I have no choice. I cannot let you live to use an ability like yours on Lady Alpha. I understand. The pilgrim choked, spasming as the pressure increased. He coughed up a worrying amount of blood. I also need to stab a man in the back, which is why I'm grateful. Hermes raised an eyebrow. Grateful for what? A sword burst out messily out of his chest, spraying blood over the pilgrim, before being withdrawn with just as little finesse. The shadow dragon collapsed lifelessly, Janemba the Fallen standing over him. Grateful I have someone to do it for me. The pilgrim gasped, falling as well and lying there, panting. Still, he wasn't too bad a sort. You had the drop on him. You could have defeated him without killing him. You already made that mistake, Janemba replied. It almost got you killed. In the instant before I attacked, the Shadow Dragon actually noticed my approach and tried to distance me with its power. But control over the 3 spatial dimensions is useless against one who can move in the 5th. Anyway, thanks for the help, Fallen. Been a while. What did we used to call you, anyway? Don't remember. Janemba grunted. Hold on. It braced itself as the Silent approached before it, gripping it by the throat. You! The Silent rasped through vocal cords unused for centuries, his eyes blazing beneath his hood. You! You want to kill me, and you're completely justified, Janemba said calmly, not moving. But you know how powerful our foe is, and you know they are the root cause for what I did. Its eyes remained impassive. I will pay for my crimes, and by your hand I'm sure. But after we win here. Yes, you will. He turned away, falling silent again and charging back at Alpha. She swung at Gohan, who shifted slightly to the side, punching her square in the face, but only succeeded in breaking his hand. He fell back, hissing, and she caught him with the forearm, bowling him over. He didn't get up, reverting back to his base form. She turned just in time to receive the Silent's attack, flipping him upside down with the Ki before driving him into the ground with the 2-fisted strike. Hands off, lady, Janemba called out. That guy's going to kill me, so don't you go killing him first. You're a strange one, Alpha muttered, observing it descend towards her. A new arrival, too. Where did you crawl out of? Do you care? Not particularly. She fired a beam up at it, and it shifted down adjacent to her. Just like the Divine Saiyan! She reacted quickly, bringing her arm back down for an elbow strike, but it shifted again, reassembling on the other side of her and bringing its sword around towards her stomach. She let it glance off her, however, before snapping her fingers, shattering the blade. Well, damn, it muttered. That could have gone better. Trust me, it's about to get much better. She kicked it away lazily, stretching her arms out after the other. I'm finally going to be able to finish what I started. But who first? She spun on one heel, biting her lip as she mulled over her various recovering opponents. Choosing randomly, she pointed over at the Silent. We have a winner. Gritting his teeth, the Silent stood, knowing she would be upon him soon, with murderous intent this time. He raised his hands over his head, forming a sphere of Ki and launched a full-force blast at Alpha. She let it wash over her, a wave breaking over the shore, before forming her own attack, mockingly using the same motion. Pathetic. Let me show you how it's done. She fired, far too fast for the worn-out Hakaishin to dodge, and he raised his arms in front of his face, bracing himself for the end. However, something struck him in the side, hurling him out of its path. Janemba, now midway through a jump kick, had knocked the Silent out of harm's way, but placed itself directly into the path of Alpha's attack. Didn't have time to think. Should have opened a portal instead, reflected it back. Too late now. I guess maybe it's better this way. It sighed. So much for my triumphant return. Well, after all that I've done, I stand by my decisions. I have no regrets. The Silent watched, wide-eyed, as Alpha's blast engulfed Janemba, burning through its natural armor plating and blasting it apart completely, leaving nothing but a few charred fragments. Terribly sorry, Alpha said, lowering her hand. He said you wanted to kill him, right? Well, if there is an afterlife for gods, maybe you can settle it there when I send you to meet him. The Silent roared wordlessly, reaching Alpha in an instant, taking hold of her forearm two-handed. Huh? She grunted, casually swinging a punch down into his stomach. Get off! He gasped, blood dripping from his mouth, but his grip tightened, cuts opening on his fingers as he dug them into her unbending armor. His body began to heat up, or crackling as it grew rapidly more violent. That's... The hunter stared, horrified. He isn't going to! Revenge was all he's lived for all these thousands of years, the pilgrim realized. And she's taken it from him. He truly doesn't care anymore. No hesitation at all. Still too weak to stand, he stretched a hand out towards his embattled comrade. Don't do it! He pleaded, voice wavering. Please! No! You won't! Alpha brought both arms to bear as the light from within enveloped the Silent's body. Smiling slightly as his tortured existence finally ceased, he vanished in a cataclysmic eruption of power, the explosion directing itself straight upwards and pulling Alpha with it, battering her from all sides as she soared off, yelling in anger into the sky. No, the pilgrim hung his head. 2 of us gone already, and so quickly. And as much as I hate to admit it, even that attack didn't stop her. This was true. Barely had the thought pass through his mind, then Alpha landed ungracefully not 10 feet away, groaning. Her armor was noticeably cracked in a couple of places. Her mind raced. What was that? I underestimated the amount of power a self-destructing Hakaishin would produce. For a second, the energy being generated was something more than divine ki, more akin to this higher form of power I wield now. Her eyes snapped open wide as the pilgrim, now lying in such close proximity, kicked off the ground and launched himself at her, gathering his mental might. He's trying to hit me with that mental attack. She kicked up at him, flipping upright and carrying him with the motion of her leg, ending up standing on top of the disoriented god, driving him into the ground as she landed. An admirable effort, but if you were hoping your friend's suicide attack slowed me down, I'll have to disappoint you. She hopped back off of him, and before she had time to get her bearings again, the world seemed to fade away, a boundless dark void surrounding her. Forming from the all-encroaching shadows, the dreamer appeared, monumental in size, filling Alpha's field of view. What kind of illusion is this? She shouted up at the now enormous Hakaishin. Illusion? Give me more credit than that. The dreamer replied, every word shaking Alpha to the core. You're in my world now. You overcame my defenses before, but now I'm on the offensive. Alpha frowned. A pocket dimension? The only other being I know capable of doing such a thing was Kronos. This one might just be the most dangerous Hakaishin. You think yourself so mighty. It is said that a frog living in a well knows nothing of the ocean. The dreamer boomed. Let me show you true power. There was no visible attack. Pain simply erupted in every square inch of her body, and she lost all sense of space and distance, tumbling through the void, the dreamer's towering visage seeming to be in every direction at once. Alpha felt her mind come under assault too, her nagging questioning of the Eternal's wisdom, her sense of betrayal at the revelation of Kronos' true nature, her desire to find peace at last. All these gnawed at her drive to fight, sapping her will. She got the sense that as soon as she gave into this, the physical attack would correspond, and she would be consumed utterly by this terrible dream world. Why fight it? The dreamer rumbled. You secretly want to be stopped, after all. You're tired of all this. Maybe a small part of me. Alpha snarled, hands clamped around her head. But even that part would only accept it if, despite my best efforts, I was beaten fairly. Giving up isn't in my nature. And she began to harden her aura, forcing back the force crushing in on her from all sides, bolstering her resolution. I serve a being far greater than you. For all your power, you are nothing compared to the Eternal. And right now, I have a direct conduit to its power. The dreamer crossed her arms. I am aware. It does seem to be keeping your mind and body intact. But how will you strike back at me? I am everywhere and nowhere in here. I am this realm. I'm glad you asked. Alpha wove her hands in front of her in a complex pattern. Because, you see, just resisting your attacks gave me enough time to prepare a counterspell. Something I'm fairly skilled with, as another of your comrades found out to his detriment earlier. The dreamer flinched, her outline wavering, flashes of light encroaching at the edges of her shadowy realm. You can't! And now I've weakened the boundaries of your dimension. Well, at our level, breaking dimensional walls is simplicity itself, no? Alpha raised a fist towards the sky, letting out a determined yell and expanding her ki in all directions, warping, cracking, and then shattering the dreamer's void. The real world returned, Alpha landing on her feet and the dreamer dropping to the ground face down in front of her. Alpha straightened up, putting on a strained smile and gazing around at her multitude of downed and beaten opponents. Now, this has been a very long day, but do you know? I think I'm finally done. Just as she said this, a furious cacophony erupted behind her, and she spun in time to witness the huge golden dragon bearing down on her. Frowning, she braced her right arm with her left, firing a pulse of energy that tore through the Ryuken attack, dissipating Gamma Shenron's brief incarnation. That's not a threat to me anymore, as impressive as it used to be. She fired a second blast, giving Goku no time to dodge, and striking him directly in the head, bringing him down with a gut-wrenching snap, and rolling him away head over heels, trailing blood as he went. I think he's dead, and after only one blow. I suppose I can't help it. My power is 2 whole worlds from his mere demigod ki now. Indeed, as the seconds stretched on, no movement came from his body. She sighed. Still, he has been tenacious. I have to respect him. What? The Super Saiyan, who had never lost his transformed state, was sitting up. As he did so, the scattered sparks of glowing energy left over from the thwarted Ryuken attack began to gather around him, flowing into his body in great golden streams, seemingly rejuvenating him as he stood. I'm not done yet! What's happening? Alpha wondered aloud. The ki coming from his body is divine? And there's so much of it! Yeah! Goku flung his aura out, power building to new heights. The silver in his hair began to be overcome with gold, until finally his appearance had reverted completely to normal, baby emerging from an arm wound with a pained shriek. He landed in a heap next to his Saiyan ally. I'm sorry, Goku. Too much power. I couldn't stay so close to it. It's okay, Goku replied calmly. I can't thank you enough for all your help today, but I can manage now. Gohan, lying half-conscious nearby like the other gods, made a sudden mental connection. I understand. When I first became the Super Saiyan God, I was able to absorb that world of power into my body. So when I turned back to normal, my power didn't go down that much. And Dad's been using the Ryuken attack so many times, generating a divine power from within his own body. It didn't come into effect until he'd done it several times, since he wasn't in quite as close proximity as I was with my Super Saiyan God powers. But now, similar to what I experienced, his own body's power isn't too far off from the power of his Ryuken. Goku knew all this, if a little less factually and more intuitively. He'd begun to experience the first effects of the naturalization process earlier, finding himself able to sense divine ki, but now it was finally complete. So this is divine ki. Gotta say, it feels pretty good. And an impressive level of it at that, Alpha shrugged. But you're still not a match for me. My power now surpasses even the divine level. Well, don't expect me to give up. He replied with a nervous grin, raising his guard and drawing one leg back. Oh, I knew you wouldn't, she replied. I think I've got to know you pretty well today, and I have no doubt you'll carry on fighting until your last breath. So I'll do my best and kill you myself in the brief time we have left before the Eternal consumes you all. She returned his grin. It would be a bit anticlimactic if we never got to settle things, wouldn't it? Right. She's going to kill me inside a minute, I'm sure. And yet, I just can't get over how exhilarating this new power is. Strange as it is, I live for moments like this. This is the end, she declared, rushing him, forming a fist with her right arm, bunching the muscles in the limb and causing the armor over it to ripple slightly as her aura flashed into visibility. She was 5 steps from him, and he never reacted in time. She was 4 steps away. 3. A massive red dragon slammed down onto her from above, its jaw swallowing her in an instant before detonating, Goku leaping back just in time to avoid the blast wave. That was like my Ryuken? The dragon looked different though. And the only other one capable of doing that technique is... Alpha stood, shaking her head to clear the dizziness, waving away the rising smoke and revealing herself to be unharmed. Who the hell? As the last of the smoke blew away, another figure was revealed slightly behind her. A tall, muscular warrior, with a sheathed sword slung over his back and hair down past his waist, strolled past her, ignoring her completely. Hey Goku, Raditz called cheerily, waving to his brother. How you been? Well, almost died a couple of times, Goku admitted. But I got some awesome power-ups. Looks like you got a replacement dragon after letting Gamma merge with me, huh? I'd also like to know how he got back. And what's up with his hair? He cut it ages ago, but it's back to its old length now. Yeah, Raditz paused as Alpha stepped up behind him, looming over him by over a foot. Hold on a sec. You bastard! She growled, cracking her knuckles loudly. You think you can just ignore me? He cocked a smile, turning slowly as he activated his Super Saiyan transformation. Excuse me, lady, but I haven't seen my brother in a while. I'm trying to get caught up. Alpha flinched back slightly. Divine Ki coming from him too? How do they do it? But no matter, she steeled herself. Even divine power was no threat to me now. Raditz drew back his fist. So give us a damn minute, will ya? He threw his punch, a straight uppercut, and she idly moved to block. But as his limb moved, something sparked around it, close to his skin, like a multitude of tiny bursts of energy, linking together and forming a spiraling series of rings. As he did this, his arm accelerated, swinging upwards at breakneck speed, and planting his fist right in her chin, hurling her up and away through the air, shearing off a chunk of her chest plate as it passed. She spluttered, uncomprehending, as she flew, and all that was running through her head, over and over, was... What?! Goku, looking on wide-eyed, echoed her thoughts. What?! Raditz glanced back at him, shrugging as if this was all no big deal, and he didn't understand the question. What? One climactic event begets another. The remaining gods of destruction have arrived in Universe 7, and together they managed to defeat the remaining Shadow Dragons, leaving Beerus and Gohan to take on Alpha Shenron, the main herald of the Eternal. During the battle, Beerus ordered Gohan out of the fight, and took on the weakened Alpha Shenron, and eventually emerged victorious. However, as Beerus was about to deliver the killing blow, the Eternal itself interfered. He has opened a conduit to his own power inside Alpha Shenron, and now she is far greater than the gods of destruction. She is on a level far more powerful than Divine Ki can comprehend. Now, with her newfound power and terrifying presence, she's been able to take out every single god of destruction, every single Z fighter that stands in her way. As a result, 2 Hakaishin have died. The Fallen, who was able to break out of the 13th Universe's seal, sacrificed himself to save the Silent. And the Silent committed suicide to try and take Alpha Shenron with him. All seemed lost. Even with Goku achieving Divine Ki, it seemed like nothing could save them. But suddenly, out of nowhere, Raditz returned, using Omega Shenron, the red dragon from Namek's distant future, as a brand new Dragon Punch. And it seems he may have the power to actually fight Alpha Shenron. With a simple uppercut, he's able to send her flying and tear off a chunk of her armor. What is this new power that Raditz wields? And will it be enough to defeat Alpha? It is all or nothing now. If Earth wins, the Eternal will never break through. But if Alpha wins, everything will be destroyed. Who will win? Who will die? Tune in next time for the conclusion of Act 1 of Even Further Beyond.